being like, I think I just saw Andrew Yang come by helmetless.
This seems like a good video. I've rewinded
like
it a little bit.
Just kidding.
All right, I want to start us off by asking about your signature policy proposal, the thing that has gotten you a lot of attention. Many people will know it as universal basic income. You call it the Freedom Dividend.
Yeah.
And what it means basically is that every American adult, if you're elected, ages 18 to 64, will get $1,000 a month from the government, no strings attached, to do whatever they want with.
Yes. No, it's actually 18 till death now.
It's 18 till death now.
I would do 18 plus so people can go to college.
A couple months ago. You think that this is necessary for a reason. Can you spend a couple minutes laying out why you think this bold proposal?
I don't know how much you could say.
I spent 7 years running a nonprofit, and I'd started at
1,000, 1,400
in the Midwest and the South primarily, helped create several thousand jobs, and I saw that we are in the midst of the
could be based on location.
What experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. I'm convinced that Donald Trump won in 2016 because of the early waves of the fourth industrial revolution.
The fourth industrial revolution. This is important too.
Jobs
yes.
In Michigan, Ohio.
That's why I'm trying to learn data science right now.
Iowa, all the swing states you needed to win.
Programming.
And now that set of changes is shifting to retail.
Have a degree in Bachelor of Science, Environmental Studies, KU, but I don't have much experience.
The average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. So when her store closes, there aren't a ton of
I need to work on my math
options.
Get it back up to par.
Of which there are 2.5 million in the U.S., paying $14 an hour. Soon we will start replacing truck drivers, and being a trucker is the most common job in many states. There are 3.5 million truck drivers. Average age 49, 94% men. And there are another 7 million Americans who work in the truck stops, motels, and diners that serve the truckers. So if we do nothing, we are going to be in for much worse than Donald Trump's election, unfortunately. The studies have a range of
operate heavy
20
machinery.
and 40% of American jobs subject to automation in the next 20 to 30 years. Which is not that much time, and that's a lot of jobs.
My dad works at a quarry,
I've
driving a
dump
truck, for example, but he's old.
And we have to get our acts together. If we keep trying to respond to the symptoms and don't address the root causes, then our communities will continue to suffer.
Okay. Hefel, I know that in your job you think a lot about workforce development. What questions do you have for Mr. Yang about a universal basic income?
Yes, I mean, it's true that automation is taking away a lot of jobs, or I feel that automation is taking away a lot of jobs. But
some finance stuff, economics, I would like to
$1,000 a month to each individual
possibly go to University of Colorado.
In many ways,
masters
solve that problem. But your nonprofit works
environmental
with women of what age? Or
program that focus on economics, possibly.
So I ran a nonprofit for a number of years that I'd started.
Class from the UC Berkeley Extension on the circular economy.
Resources if every American was getting an additional $1,000 a month. So the money ends up supercharging not just existing businesses.
I don't know how much money to pay for actually
creativity.
Like I'm learning on edX right now, but I don't have enough money. I feel
survival is
pay to get the verified certificate
striking out and trying to do something.
On my learning on data science.
It also supercharges nonprofits, volunteering,
lots of online resources.
The arts, culture,
many have to pay.
Probably. Like many of the things that we
got a lot
value,
of good books
but the market
recently to read.
Value.
I need to read.
And I'm going to say that women
working on
and
myself,
people of color actually fall into the
self-development,
same category that the market will systematically undervalue. And so,
pretty much
if you say,
reading the
and I know
Quran,
this because I started a nonprofit and
newly,
worked there for a number of years, very proud
almost
of
kind
the
of
work and
found
continues to this day.
God or whatever. I had a crazy dream.
Most nonprofits are trying to address some of the
learning and getting better every day.
Important issues at the margins. And you would need to fundamentally
seems most perfect,
the way our economy works if you're going to truly get into the guts of that problem.
I especially like to hear it
in
Arabic.
Universal basic income actually
it's like poetry.
Transforms the way of life for many Americans in a way that would make
English,
more
it's
able to
not
solve
as
real problems.
grand sounding and
so,
nice.
I mean, And how did you come up? I know your part of your slogan is math. I mean, how did you come up with $1,000? Because $1,000 here in New York City or San Francisco is a lot different than anywhere else. So, as a nonprofit founder, 12,000 a year would go far, but it wouldn't go that far. So.
So $12,000 was at first. It's not my number. It was proposed by a guy named Andy Stern and then studied by the Roosevelt Institute. So it was another proposal that had been vetted in various ways. But it does make sense on many levels because $12,000 a year is right below the U.S. poverty line, which is approximately $12,770 a year. So it moves you up to that level, and this is per adult, mind you. So if you have 2 adults in your household, it's $24,000.
What are you going to do with the tax
a year?
bracket?
So it moves you up and gets the pressure off, but it doesn't serve as a full work replacement where there's virtually no American who's like, oh, I'm going to quit my job. We got $1,000 a month. Like that's not really. I'm sure John here is like, like not ready to pack it in $1,000 a month because you have a family like I do. Who I can see over your shoulder.
That's why I think it should be more. It should vary.
So it's enough to be a game changer. It would make us stronger, healthier, less stressed out, mentally healthier, would reduce domestic violence, reduce hospital visits, would dramatically increase the graduation rate in many positive social indicators. But it's not meant to be a full work replacement, and it's certainly not meant to solve every problem. I will suggest, though, that if you extrapolate like what the second order effects are, if you take a town of 10,000 adults in Missouri,
I imagine not basing it on location.
That's $10 million in that town, which ends up going to things like car repairs,
just having a set low rate
signups, local nonprofits,
helps more
and so
rural
then if you lost
areas,
your truck driving job and you're in that
keep
town, there's a much greater chance that
division
you can plug
between
into existing
rich and poor, which
because
is kind of
the
like
local
what
economy is
rich
much more
people
robust.
seemingly want.
But doesn't
like
I mean,
think about
it's
super rich places in California or
a wealth
something.
tax instead.
Actually, do you mind if we just get a little bit of clarity before we go in?
Think about
So I think
more rural
I'm going to put
places
words in
in
your
the
mouth
country.
here. How do you ask the question? But I think what you want to ask is how do you plan on paying for this? And I wonder if, before we get to that, I can just ask you. Can I ask you to
people
do
have to
some
move
quick math
away
for us?
from
Sure.
Okay. How many adults
countryside
in the United
type
States
areas
would
to
be
go
eligible
to
for this
cities to
$12,000
get
a year?
jobs at work?
So if you were to take a broad number, about 200 million,
200 million times $12,000 a year.
2.4 trillion.
2.4 trillion a year this would cost. Okay. John, I know you have a question about that. Please go ahead.
Sure.
Also with this question of capitalism, climate change, tackling those issues.
A tax, broadly across, consumption of goods versus a wealth tax, which would be a tax on, the wealthiest Americans. So you have this
a wealth tax?
Kind of income inequality in the country, and it makes sense.
And it's
superficially that you sort of take from those who have the most and even it out, and
simple.
That would seem
make
to
the tax
point to
code.
A wealth tax. So why that tax instead?
And
Same for everyone. The more you make,
would you just explain as well what a VAT tax
the more you get
is? I think
taxed.
some of our listeners
It's
may
like
be
the
unfamiliar with that.
lower poor people, working
And I think
people.
I said this on the debate stage.
Same rules should
Senator
apply to
Warren.
all people,
So wealth
all
tax
businesses.
makes perfect sense in principle because you have this winner-take-all economy. You have historic levels of wealth in the hands of a relatively small number of Americans. And so I endorse the spirit of a wealth tax. The problem is that when they tried a wealth tax in France, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and a half dozen other countries, they ended up repealing it because it didn't generate the revenue they thought it would, and they had massive implementation and compliance problems. And I believe the same thing would happen here, if anything, to a higher degree, because the wealthy in America are I think, even more extreme in their tax avoidance practices.
But I mean, Warren has a 15% avoidance, kind of factor in there. So your assumption, right, that people are going to avoid their taxes. Also, our taxes are different than European taxes. And taxes is just kind of a problem to be solved, right?
Well,
I mean, couldn't you just
even if
change
you-
the tax code?
Or even if you buy everything, like the amount of money
You have
that
to change it.
Senator Warren's wealth tax projected to raise, even in the most optimistic, is less than a third than.
Oh, I missed something.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so there's certainly this.
This was good at the end.
Class divide that is becoming
Huge
more
class
pronounced.
divide.
But I think the regional divide and the urban-rural
Regional,
divide is
yes.
becoming much more extreme, and that is
Yeah.
threatening to tear us apart because rural areas are getting systematically depleted and sucked dry. Like the automation I'm talking about started in agriculture at the farms, and when you go to many of these farms, like the notion you might have of this beautiful family farm or whatnot, I mean, it's got replaced by this this corporate behemoth that's like gobbled up like a dozen family farms and glued them together.
Yeah.
So the divide is more extreme, and the worst part is that we're being pitted against each other, often using various cultural markers that have nothing to do with the economics that actually should unify us all. Because if you have, you're an attorney, I was an attorney for 5 unhappy months. So you could say, it's like, hey, I'm an attorney, so, you know, I'm safe from these changes that Andrew's talking about. But you know that I'm not. That artificial intelligence can edit contracts and legal documents better, more quickly, more accurately, more cheaply.
Or even if it's not me, it's, you know, what about my kids? Maybe I'm winning now, but what does the future hold, right?
Yes. So this becomes something where it should bring us all together if we present it in the right way. It's not immigrants, it's technology, and it's humanity that we have to preserve.
Ethel, I've seen your eyebrows go up a couple times during this exchange, and I just want to ask what, based on what you've been hearing, what questions do you still have?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a couple of questions, which I guess you can choose which to answer. But how do you know that the big companies are not going to push that cost, the tax that they're going to be paying, back off onto the consumers? The Freedom Dividend, how do you, I mean, sure, we don't have to necessarily go into, you know, we can choose how to spend it, and you should be spending it on necessities, but you're going to make people choose, right? You're also seeking to pay for the Freedom Dividend at the cost of other programs.
I think we just need to explain that very briefly, and it's an important point. If a family currently is getting welfare payments, SNAP, food stamps, WIC, etc., and they're getting $700 a month in welfare,
have so
under
many of
your
those
system,
programs.
that would go away. I'd get that solid $1,000, but that's $700 in SNAP and food stamps. That's not mine anymore. So I think what Ethel is asking is, if you're taking away people's welfare payments and replacing it with $1,000, is that enough? Is that what you're getting at?
Pretty much.
Right. I mean, people, you ideally hope, and this is
Change it up
with the
for
vision.
better.
The vision's great. I love the vision, right? But do people always make the choices that we need them to make in order to get to the world that you're hoping to get to?
I think this is maybe one of the bigger misconceptions about me and the Freedom Dividend. Is I see the Freedom Dividend as like a foundation or a floor. And then you don't stop building a house at the floor. It's kind of a crummy house, you know. So first, I would not want to get rid of any existing government programs. I would never be the sort of person that says like, "Hey, there are millions of Americans relying upon something that's full of our government under them."
I would still keep getting my payments.
No, so there is an opt-in. The Freedom Dividend is universal and opt-in. And if you do opt into the Freedom Dividend, then you do forego benefits that are from certain programs that are cash and cash-like. But if you love your current benefits, or let's say you're receiving $1,800 in current benefits, then would never touch it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that I'm not someone who says like, oh, we don't need to do all these other things on top of it, because $1,000 a month is just a foundation. There's a lot of work to do on top of that, and to the extent that existing programs are doing that work, fantastic. To the extent that we need new programs and organizations, all the better. You know, what's driving me is that to me, and I feel like
investing
something that's inaccurate on you, but like I ran a nonprofit for 7 years,
infrastructure,
and people were congratulating me, and I was like, you don't get it. I'm just like scratching the surface of like the problem I'm trying to tackle.
Smart grid.
You know, so to me, we have to do so much more. I would never suggest that $1,000 a month is going to do the work for us.
You were hinting at something, though, interesting, and I want to make sure that we have that answered, which is, if you give people $1,000 a month cash, they may not make the right decisions. They may make dumb decisions. What do you do about that?
Of course, some people will make decisions that I personally would disagree
It'll
with.
become
but
the new
one of the things
normal.
that never happens when Verizon or Coke or Microsoft declares a dividend, which they do all the time, and we applaud them and say, nice job, like good management. They never say, hey, what are you doing with that money? You know what I mean? Like we are the owners and shareholders of the democracy. If you get the Freedom Dividend in January and you buy a big TV, like maybe I wouldn't have bought that big TV, but it's your decision, your resources, and then hopefully you'll make it, or not even hopefully, it's like you might make a different decision in February. The benefits to me of putting this sort of agency and autonomy
you still have
in people's hands far outweigh trying to
still have laws,
to very, very
hopefully even
expenses. But I will say again that we still need to do
better
a lot of work to address the real
police,
problems in our society,
and a good
on top of anything
prison
we're doing
system.
with the Freedom Dividend.
And that's kind of what I want to get at next is the issue of inequity, right? So if they're not necessarily
connected, everything is connected to everything.
Describing how they spend that money. But then again, is $1,000 enough to really address inequities, or how are you looking to address inequities? Yes, there's a lot of work to be done. I haven't heard enough about what that is. So what's the next work besides the Freedom Dividend? How do you address it?
And also, I would raise the FAFSA.
How do you actually address it?
Housing.
Like 6,000
which one you want
semester or something. Help pay for college. And this one,
really?
Whichever one.
free
I focus on
college.
education, so.
So first,
So,
the data shows
college
that
and university
2/3 of our
funding,
kids' academic
everything
performance
is not
determined
has to
by factors
change.
outside of the school. So that's parental time spent with the children, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the household, type
Economics,
of neighborhood. And educators know this, where we're saying, teach our kids, and they're like, yeah, I'm responsible, or I can control about a third of what goes on to the kid. Like
501Cs,
like, okay.
501C3s.
So number one, if you put resources into the household, you're actually getting the kids in a better position to learn, and then helping the teachers be in a better position to teach.
All has to be taken into account.
Foundational, and that ends up balancing out more aggressively for communities that are starting in a lower base, which tends to be, unfortunately, communities of color in this country.
I think it would make small businesses
number two, the data clearly shows
much
that good
better,
teachers
much
work
help.
for weight in gold, so we should pay teachers more.
Yes, teachers need to be paid much more.
We need to retain and enlist
12,000
better teachers.
Yeah,
There's
your
so many
raise
teachers
would be
in the
good.
classroom because of burnout.
That'd be cool.
And the rest of it. Relatedly, we need more teachers. Data also shows that having individualized attention, very, very positive for kids. Having lower student-to-teacher ratio is very, very positive. So we need to staff
in
up.
the school system.
The fourth thing is we need to lighten the emphasis on standardized tests that right now is making our teachers make these choices in the classroom where they know
teachers should be given more control,
well, I'm gonna get evaluated on this test, and
more power,
going to get evaluated on this test,
more respect.
This direction. And one of my boys is autistic, and so he's neurologically atypical. And while that's relatively extreme, there are many atypical kids in our schools today that are just getting beaten over the head with these standardized tests, and and many of them are having their self-esteem crushed and their hopes for the future altered forever.
And whatnot can talk and do talk to their parents,
as a means to
it's
determine
okay.
which kids not to
No reason to be scared.
And now we're using it every year like it's wartime. And we're treating our kids
can
like
be fired very easily.
So we need to de-emphasize these tests and let the teachers actually do their jobs.
It's very easy to get in trouble as a teacher.
Enormous. We have to stop pretending that every kid's going to go to college.
To always
only
keep
a third of
competitive.
Americans are going to graduate from college, and that's relatively stable. Like it hasn't gone up from like 20 to 33% over anything like that. Like it's gone like 30. It's relatively stable. So we should stop presenting college as the end all be all to our high school kids in particular, and
That's
say,
true.
look, technical apprenticeship vocational programs are very, very, very stable careers in many cases. Only 6% of American high school students are in vocational and technical and apprenticeship right now. In Germany, that's 59%. Think about that gulf.
You can do a lot of self-education as well.
To stand the test of time. It's very hard to automate
Experience
away a plumber
is
or an
like
HVAC
so
repair
valuable,
person. Can
really.
you imagine having a robot do that? Very, very hard. so we need
Another
to
reason I
invest,
support
and
universal
as usual,
basic
it's
income and
hard to
doing
think
away with the
because
federal
even
minimum
after I'm
wage.
president, I say, all right, let's invest in vocational. You can't just conjure up like a shop and technical training.
It gives people
like in a school.
upward
It's much
mobility.
easier just to have like some textbooks in that classroom. It's cheaper too. So if you try and do the right thing by our kids, it's going to be a higher degree of investment, but it's the right thing to do. So these are some of the things that I believe we should do in education that would help alleviate some of the
have
racial
online
inequities.
online voting system.
With the last question?
All these things would be awesome.
We're going to shift topics in a second, but I wanted to
check
ask
out my site.
You both had some very pointed questions about the Freedom Dividend, about the $1,000.
Have a nice day.